Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan here from Gameessays. Welcome back to another tier list. Today we're going to be looking at the overworlds of every Legend of Zelda game and ranking them. So everything that basically is the map except for the actual dungeons in the game, I'm considering that the overworld. And if you enjoy these tier lists, please make sure to like and subscribe. I also do plenty of other videos, randomizer playthrough of Ocarina of Time, as well as more high effort essay style videos. That's where the channel comes from. And of course, I am reviewing every single Zelda game, so check out that series if you haven't yet. And please suggest other tier lists for me to do in the future, because I've done a lot and I'm kind of starting to run out of ideas. But anyway, let's get into the video. We're going to start with Ocarina of Time. It's a good baseline for an overworld. And the Ocarina of Time overworld, I would say, is one that has aged a little bit more poorly than most games. Now, it's an overworld that I like a lot, but I can also kind of try to be a little objective and realize that Hyrule Field is just empty. Like, I enjoyed Kakariko Village, the Lost Woods, all that, but it's, it hasn't aged particularly well. So I'm gonna say that Ocarina of Time's overworld is a C tier. I think it's solid. I wouldn't consider it bad. And even though it's like my bias wants to rate it higher, I do feel like I said, it's one that has felt age more so than other games. Let's do the original Legend of Zelda. I am actually going to say the original Legend of Zelda's overworld is an A tier. And that might surprise people with, this old NES game, but it is really good and it's very fun to explore and to find really great rewards. You have full heart containers lying around. The fact that you can get swords, sword upgrades relatively early in the game. Exploring is just a lot of fun. I wouldn't put it S tier, mainly because there is a lot of secrets and stuff with the overworld that if you don't spend hours and hours and hours, you're never going to find it. Or, of course, you have to look at a guide to figure some things out. So the fact that it's just kind of one step beyond obtuse means that, it just doesn't quite hit S tier for me because of that. And we can stick with the NES games, and I would say Zelda 2, I'm gonna say, is a D tier overworld. I like me some Zelda 2, don't get me wrong, but I do think the RPG style overworld is not only just not my style, but also the map's a lot more boring and uninteresting compared to all the secrets and stuff that you could find in the original Legend of Zelda. I feel like that's one thing when you went from Zelda 1 to Zelda 2 that got hit the hardest, was how fun and interesting the overworld was. And I think Zelda 2's overworld is probably one of the weakest parts of that game. There's other parts about Zelda 2, like the combat, that I find to be more fun. I enjoy spells and things like that. But the overworld, it's just not my style. And I just think aesthetically it also just looks kind of ugly and blocky compared to, I know it's like NES, but other overworlds just look better. Wind Waker. It's a vast ocean. Some people say it's too barren, too desolate, just not enough going on. But I would put Wind Waker's ocean and Hyrule as a whole basically at an A tier. I enjoy exploring the islands, and it feels so vast and open, and there's so many little pirate stands or submarines that you can explore. There's so many on top of basically nearly 50 islands that you can explore. Now, granted, I think what keeps it obviously from an S tier is that a lot of these islands kind of suck. Let's be honest, there's not much there. They could have put a lot more rewards. And some of them are just these tiny little blocks of land, and maybe there's a heart piece on it and literally nothing else to do. So there's a little bit of wasted potential there. But nevertheless, I do think it's a great open overworld to explore. It's fun to find treasure. There's so much to do. And I think the problem is that there's just not great enough rewards to motivate you to want to explore endlessly in this the ocean of the Wind Waker. But I still think it's really good. Let's Breath of the Wild, man, let's just do it. Breath of the Wild is an S tier. And this shouldn't really surprise anyone because I feel like the overworld of Breath of the Wild is the game. Because, the shrines, they're usually 1 or 2 puzzles. They're pretty short and they're designed to be that way. But most of the game you are spending in the overworld, unlike other Zelda games where you spend a lot of time in the dungeons. And people, again, everyone says every single overworld is empty and there's nothing to do, but I never found that problem in Breath of the Wild. I always thought there was plenty to do. Every time you explored an area, you would find something. If it looked like something should be there, there was something there. And again, sometimes the rewards weren't always great. They could have done a little bit more. It got a little boring once you kind of figured out, okay, it's either going to be a jewel, it's going to be like an opal or something like that, or it's going to be a shrine, it's going to turn into a shrine, or, eventually you kind of figured out the formula, or, it's going to be Korok seed, of course. So that did get a little bit, that was the one thing that took away from the joy, but other than that, I just really, really loved thoroughly exploring Hyrule and Breath of the Wild, and like I said, it is the game, and I think they did an amazing job with that. We can get the no overworlds out of the way. So Four Swords Adventures does not have no overworld. It is like a level select. That is the same with Triforce Heroes, and I believe with A Link to the Past's Four Swords game, not actually A Link to the Past. Okay, moving on. Let's go to the Minish Cap. Minish Cap, it's always gonna be B tier. I feel like everything Minish Cap is just B tier. I like the game, but again, it's always just like, yeah, Minish Cap, it's solid. So why is it not higher than B tier? Because I feel like Minish Cap's overworld, it's solid, but sometimes it's annoying to get around, and it's not my favorite. And having to use like Kinstone sometimes just to get to a place, it got a little annoying for me, but overall, I think it's good. It's just nice, solid. That's like everything with the Minish Cap. It's a nice, solid Zelda game, but it doesn't do anything incredible. Okay, Spirit Tracks. I'm gonna say Spirit Tracks is probably gonna be a D tier. It's been a while since I played this game. This is probably the one Zelda game that I need to play it this year because it's been so long since I played it. It's the Zelda game I've gone the longest without playing, basically. And yeah, I remember, you're on a train most of the time, and the kind of your surroundings are just kind of boring, right? Because I feel like they spent a lot of time with the fact that you're on a train and controlling the train and everything, that they didn't really spend a lot of time like kind of decorating the rest of the world. So it almost it reminded me of like you're on like a Disney ride or something. Maybe not even Disney ride, because Disney would put a lot more stuff going on as you were on the ride, but it felt like a theme park ride where it was just kind of like they have like these painted on trees that you would go by when you're in the forest area. Of course, when you actually get to the towns, there's a lot more going on there, but the actual world itself, it feels like you're on like a carnival ride or something. It just doesn't feel like fleshed out and lived in and everything, except for the actual towns that you visit. But like going in between that, the land in between is just not at all interesting. A Link to the Past. I think A Link to the Past goes up in the S tier. And what I like about A Link to the Past is its overworld. Obviously, we have two overworlds. We have the regular Hyrule, the light world, and we have the dark world. And there's no wasted space in A Link to the Past overworld. It's expertly crafted, and getting around the map is very easy, but also when you're trying to figure out how to get into the dungeons and going between the light world and the dark world and trying to find the right portal that will get you into that dungeon, it's very interesting and it makes the overworld fun. It's great in the way that when you just need to get from one side to the other, just to, go to the town, go to Kakariko Village or whatever, it's super easy to get around and do what you need to do. But then when you're trying to progress in the game, the overworld is a puzzle, but it's not like the whole overworld is a puzzle. And yeah, like I said, there's no wasted space. Getting around for like a side quest or something is easy. And then when you're actually progressing, there's like a challenge there. There's an interesting kind of puzzle to solve there. So it's just expertly crafted. And for that, it definitely deserves an S tier. Link Between Worlds, I think, does a similar thing, but I don't think executes it as well because it's basically it's borrowing a lot from A Link to the Past, but I'm going to give it an A tier. It's a very, very similar map, but it has its own things going on, so I respect it, and I like the similar puzzles that it tries to do. I don't think it executes it, like I said, as perfectly as A Link to the Past, but I think it does a very, very good job. Link's Awakening, I'm going to actually also put at an A tier. Some people might put Link's Awakening's Overworld at an S tier, but the reason I am not is because I'm not into this style of gameplay as much, where it's like very puzzle and item heavy getting around the map. I think Link's Awakening, they did an amazing job with the Game Boy Color, and then eventually obviously made it way to the Switch, but it still kind of kept the spirit of the original. Is they basically, again, with that Link to the Past, no wasted space mentality of, if you actually look at the map for Link's Awakening, it's incredibly small, but when you play the game, it feels really large, and it's incredible how they kind of trick you into thinking the map is way bigger than it actually is. What I'm not as keen to, as it's just not as obvious for me, like where to go and how to get through places. I got stuck a lot, and like I said, it's very puzzle heavy, very item heavy. You're constantly switching switching items to get through the overworld, and it's just not my favorite style. So I'm appreciating it and putting it in an A tier. I could see how this is easily an S tier for some people, but for me, I respect it and I'll just leave it in an A tier. Skyward Sword, I think we all know, for me, it's going in the D tier. Maybe D tier is a little harsh. I'm gonna go C tier. I'll be nice. Now, it's weird because, you know what? Okay, it's because I like Ocarina of Time's Overworld more, so I am gonna leave it in the D tier. I'll put it at the top of D tier. I think this is just one thing. Skyward Sword did plenty of things well, but the overworld is definitely not one of those things. The sky is very empty, and again, it has that kind of like puzzle progression, like Link's Awakening style, that I don't love as much, where the areas they don't feel like they're real places. They just feel like they're kind of like, it feels very video gamey, which is weird to say because it's a video game, right? But I like that, getting to the Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time, it feels like, you're in a mountain and then you're going into the Fire Temple. Whereas in Skyward Sword, it just feels like you're in an obstacle course before you get into another dungeon. So the immersion, it kind of takes you out of the immersion. And the sky, I think we all know the issues with the sky. It's so boring. And if people want to say like Wind Waker's ocean is boring, I think the sky is so much more boring. There was way less islands that were worth your time. They had that Thunderhead there to basically just waste your time, to just travel extra far for this one thing to do. It was like, what was the point of Thunderhead? It made no sense to me. Like, it was just like, how do we extend the game by just making you fly to this further away place in the sky? It didn't like add anything at all. So yeah, I just think, dungeons in Skyward Sword, I like the story, I like the music, I like a lot of things about Skyward Sword, but the overworld is one of its biggest failures for sure. Okay, Oracle games. I'm going to say that Oracle of Seasons is definitely a B tier for me. I think it's just a very solid overworld. It's fun to switch between the seasons. It's like, I like how there is puzzle aspects of getting across the map with the seasons and everything, but I don't think it's like too much of a pain to get around. And for that, I think it's a great, solid B tier. And Ages, this where, again, a lot of people would probably disagree with me, but I'm actually saying that I like the Ages overworld less. Now, it's been a bit since I played it, but I just remember it being a lot more frustrating to navigate and get around in the overworld than it was in Seasons. Now, for people who really love puzzles, like people that are just puzzle enthusiasts, they're probably going to look at Ages and just think it's way better than Seasons, where it's like, just the overworld style of Seasons was just more my style. That's what it comes down to. Again, this could be S tier for some people. I would believe it, and I think it's totally valid, but not for me. Phantom Hourglass. Phantom Hourglass, I think, also fits in the C tier. It's just kind of like a lesser version of Wind Waker, but it's not bad. It's really not bad, but it's just like, it's a little bit boring, but, it's not bad. I don't know. Not much else to say other than it's not bad. Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask, I think I'm going to say is a solid A tier. I think it's a much better overworld than Ocarina of Time. Now, there's a lot I like I said, about Ocarina of Time. I just feel like its overworld hasn't quite aged as well. But I feel like Majora's Mask's overworld has aged more gracefully because there's so much more going on and there's so much more to do. You run into a lot more characters, and all these characters have their schedules. I mean, if we're counting Clock Town in the overworld, I just think it definitely beats Ocarina of Time in terms of overworld. I mean, I don't even think it's close, but yeah, it's just more densely packed and more interesting, I think. Ocarina, again, like I said, I love it, but I think that Majora's has just aged better. And yeah, there's just way more going on, way more things to do, way more mini games just randomly kind of strewn about the area. It's just more packed with fun things to do. And yeah, I think it's just really, really solid. And then finally, we get to everyone's favorite, Twilight Princess, the one I like to crap on all the time. Twilight Princess's overworld. Where do we put it? Where do we put it? All right, it's going in the B tier, baby. This is just one. Here we go. And I'm going to be reviewing Twilight Princess as of this recording, depending on when you watch it. I'm working on playing through Twilight Princess to do my review, but I haven't gotten very far yet. But I will say the overworld, it never really stuck with me. There's a lot of things Twilight Princess does great. The overworld in this game just never, I never got attached to it. And I don't know if that's just because, I played this game, way after it came out for the first time. I don't know, but it never quite, I think it's solid. It's good. Hyrule Field, it's kind of divided up into these sections, and a lot of people do talk about, once again, people say every single overworld's empty, and people do say that Twilight Princess's Hyrule Field feels empty. I mean, there's areas I like. The castle town is very cool. It feels very lively. So I definitely give it that. Like I said, it's really not bad, but I don't think it's amazing. The Lake Hylia area is really cool, but there's other areas of it. It's got Gerudo Desert. Gerudo Desert's pretty cool. I'm kind of, I'm back and forth on it. I'm going to give it a high B tier. I know some of you will say, how is it not at least A tier? But that's just how I feel. Like, Gerudo Desert's pretty sweet, but again, not like a ton going on there, but it is what it is. I'm more attached. I will be completely honest. I'm just, I grew up playing Wind Waker, and I feel more attached to that game, much more attached to that game than I do Twilight Princess. So it's probably, this is all bias anyway, but that's probably where that's coming from. But I've just never been super attached to the Twilight Princess Overworld. They got some cool stuff going on, don't get me wrong, and it's in the B tier. It's still it's above Ocarina of Time, if that helps satisfy people. So that is the tier list. Make sure to let me know what you guys think. Feel free to tear me apart in the comments. I look forward to the discussion. And please let me know, what other tier lists you want to see? Ones that at least don't require me to have a galaxy brain memory of every minute detail of the game. But, I've done a lot. Happy to do more. And thank you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And please check out some of my other videos, like my review series, as well as I put out recently a video on why I think we'll never know what's beyond Hyrule from what Nintendo's kind of development mentality is, not so much like a lore reason. But worked hard on that video. I'm very proud of it, so I'd appreciate if you guys check that out. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.